Today I'm going to be demonstrating the new hooks feature coming to CAM. This feature is helpful when custom logic is required that we aren't able to help with. One example of this would be MediaWiki. We've been able to migrate MediaWiki many times in the past. The problem is that one of the parameters set in the local settings.php that's stored is the WG server value, which matches the route on the currently running cluster. So when this gets migrated, if this isn't updated, it will continue to point you back at the source cluster. And of course things won't work. So you either have to go in there manually or come up with another method of achieving this. Today we're going to do it with a hook container that's going to run some Ansible with a playbook that we upload, and then we shouldn't have to do anything manual. It should just come up and work. So to get started, we're going to create a plan like normal. We're going to click Add. Give it a name. We'll of course go from our source to our target, and the namespace is MediaWiki. In there we have our MariaDB and MediaWiki container, each with a PV, which we'll set up here to do a copy. Add the hook. We'll call it MediaWiki-repair. It's going to use a Ansible playbook here. So we'll choose the playbook that I have. In here you have a window that will give you a peek at what you've uploaded so that you can confirm it's what you actually want. Here we have the image that we're going to use to run it. This is a modified Ansible runner that we've built that has the Kubernetes, the K80s modules for Ansible loaded up, as well as OC binary, so that it provides some basics for working with a OpenShift cluster, but you could replace this with another container that has additional Ansible modules or whatever you want, really. We also have this option down here, which we're not going to use today, to run a custom container. If you don't want to use Ansible, this will just start the entry point and wait for it to complete. You could write something in Go, Bash, Python, whatever you want. As long as it runs and exits cleanly, it should, as a job, it should function properly. So then we choose whether we want to use the source or the destination cluster. You need to provide a service account. So we have the migration controller service account available and has enough permissions for what I'm trying to do, so I'm just going to go ahead and use that. And then I need to provide the namespace where it's going to run, and the service account exists. So I'll just use the OpenShift migration namespace that we have available. And lastly, we need to choose the phase that it's going to run in. And here we have 4 options. You can either run it before the backup, after the backup, just before the restore, which these two run back to back. But you know, if you want to run 2 things in the middle, one on the destination, one on the source, you can do that. And then after the restore. So in this case, we're going to do it post restore. So we'll be running at the very end, and we click add, and we have our hook, and we're going to click finish. Everything's been validated, and really all we have to do from there is migrate. So I'll get that started, and then we'll look at a couple other things while that's going. All right, that's off and running. So I'll bring this up so we can watch the status. But before we get there, I'll get the hook and show you what that resource looks like. Alright, so this is pretty straightforward. You have the name and namespace, just like any other resource you would expect. We give the execution namespace, the image, the playbook, which is base64 encoded here. If you didn't provide this, that would be the difference between a custom container where we just run the entry point and it does whatever you want. Of course, the service account we provided, and whether you want to run on the source or destination. And that's really all there is to it. Now on the make plan, the hooks are just presented as one of the 4 phases and the name and namespace location of the hook. And that's how it's tied together from the plan. What will happen when this runs, when this hook runs, is the playbook will be decoded from base64 and re-encoded onto a config map mounted into the container, and the container will run as a job, which we'll see over here. We're watching the destination cluster where the controller is running. We'll also see the hook container run, and we can look at the logs of that. So it looks like we're at the stage now where things are getting quiesced. So if I was over here on my source cluster, yep, we've got our stage pods running, so it looks like things have been quiesced. And then of course over here we won't have anything until the backup completes, but we can watch that. So our stage backup has been created. Looks like our data is being restored at this point. Stage pods are terminating everywhere. So we're basically done with the source cluster. So over here, I'll just watch the destination cluster now. And I'll free up my console over here. So here we have the hook container finally running. So if we do, this is the Ansible it's running. So basically here it's a little more verbose than I would probably normally make it, but for the sake of demonstration, we're looking at the old value here, so you can see jmontleon source. We get the route on the new cluster, and you'll notice it's just jmontleon. And then here we go ahead and replace it, and then we see that the new value is updated. We're restarting the MediaWiki container, and there we go. So on this new cluster, if I do get route-n MediaWiki, get the route here. So here you can see we completed 100% successful. Our pod has run. If I go here, my MediaWiki is working and not redirecting to the old cluster. And that pretty much sums up the demonstration. Thank you for watching.